Romans 3:31 for Illiteralites. What law are we to establish? Romans 3:31. Do we make void the law through faith? God forbid. Yeah, we establish the law. To interpret this to mean Paul is saying to establish Moses' law after all that he wrote before and after it would be the most intellectually irresponsible thing a person could do. But that is how the Hebrew Illiteralites interpret this, and this is what I call Hebrew illiteralitism at its finest. Paul, although when he says, do we make void the law through faith, is talking about the law of Moses, yet the law he's talking about establishing afterwards is the law of faith unto good works, or as he calls it, the righteousness or the things contained in the law here. Romans 2:14-15. For when the Gentiles which have not the law do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law unto themselves, which shew the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts the meanwhile accusing or else excusing one another. These things contained in the law by the context, meaning the righteousness of the law, which would be the same righteousness that he's talking about here, but without the law. Romans 3:21. But now the righteousness of God without the law is manifested, being witnessed by the law and the prophets. And this would be the same righteousness of God without the law that he's saying here that the uncircumcision fulfills. The same people he's saying that had not the law from verses 14 and 15, which is even more evident by them not being circumcised, being that the circumcision was a part of the law. So there can be no way that the uncircumcised could fulfill a law that circumcision is a part of if he's talking about that law. Romans 2:26-29. Therefore, if the uncircumcision keep the righteousness of the law, shall not his uncircumcision be counted for circumcision? And shall not uncircumcision, which is by nature, if it fulfill the law, judge thee, who by the letter and circumcision dost transgress the law? For he is not a Jew, which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew which is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart in the spirit and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men but of God. And I repeat, there is no way that he was talking about establishing a law that circumcision was required to keep if he was talking about establishing that law. And there is no way he could be saying establish that law that required certain works or deeds either, when he's here saying by those deeds will no flesh be justified but by faith. Romans 3:27-28. Where is the boasting then? It is excluded. By what law? Of works? Nay, but by the law of faith. Therefore, we conclude that a man is justified by faith without the deeds of the law. So again, here he's talking about establishing another law. Romans 3:31. Do we make void the law through faith? God forbid. Yeah, we establish the law, the righteousness contained in the law. You feel me? Context is kryptonite for a Hebrew illiteralite. So all praises to the Most High God, the invisible Father, and shalom to the foreknown elect in his Son, the Christ scattered abroad. To the dividing asunder of all Hebrew illiteralite biblical blunder. You niggas is light work. For real. For real. And I just stayed in the immediate vicinity of that verse, you feel me? I ain't even bounce around. I could go through all Paul's letters and prove the same thing, man. But I just want to stay in context, man. But shalom. Okay. Peace.